Okay, good morning, everyone. Um, my name is Dr. Adiola Adams of the Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution Department. What we'll be discussing this morning is a course that is very topical and that I strongly believe that will help us to understand some of the contemporary issues around terrorism, the nature of global terrorism, PCR415, PCR415. So this is a form of introduction to the course. As a kind of preliminary information, let me just inform you that this is a 3-unit course that has a minimum duration of 1 semester. It is suitable for all students of peace studies and conflict resolution, and of course it consists of 20 units. The scope of the course: number one, we'll look at the definition of terrorism, the history of terrorism, perception and ideological stream of terrorism. We also go further to consider the elements and anomalies of terrorism. Then local, regional, and global factors that support the continuation of terrorism. Profile of terrorists and their organizations. Terrorist weapons, resources, and equipment. The types of terrorist acts. Terrorist tactics and targets and victims. We'll look at all this in a holistic form so that we'll understand the nuances that are associated with terrorism. Number one aim is to expose the complex phenomenon of global terrorism. We want to look at its various perception and interpretations to show how global terrorism has contributed, in undermining international peace. Global war on terrorism and counter-terrorism are the efforts that have been mounted so far, the challenges in controlling the spread of terrorism to various parts of the world. It will also form the focus of our discussion. The objectives are as follows. We will try as much as possible to define the concept of terrorism, differentiate between guerrilla warfare and terrorism, look at the origin of the word terrorism. We'll discuss the nature of global terrorism, and then the relationship between anti-colonialism and terrorism. We'll also consider the different types of terrorism. We'll identify and describe the types of tactics being adopted by terrorist organizations. We'll go further to look at the various explanatory perspectives on the causes of terrorism. That is very, very important. We'll also differentiate between broad and specific target victims of terrorism. Furthermore, we'll consider the various terrorist organizations, the characteristics of terrorist organization, the link between the terrorist bodies. We define the concept of ideology, which is very central to the concept of terrorism. We want to look at the relationship between ideology and terrorism, identify the element of terrorism, describe the anomalies associated with terrorism. We also critically look at the local, regional, and global factors that support the continuation of terrorism. Then we want to know the profile of prominent terrorist organizations to identify their base and areas of operation. All these are very, very crucial. We want to know the types of weapons used by terrorist organizations, identify and discuss sources of terrorist resources and funding, describe terrorism during the Cold War period, discuss the relationship between terrorism and the media, explain the global war on terrorism, the role of UN in combating global terrorism. We want to identify counter-terrorism instrument of the UN, the UN PCR415 modules 5131. We want to discuss the role of AU in combating terrorism in the continent. And of course, we want to identify and explain the challenges in controlling global terrorism. The course materials that will be useful in the course of this program is the course guide. We all know the course guide, the study units, textbooks and references, the assignment file, and of course the presentation schedule. All this will form the bulk of the course materials. Walking through the course, read the study unit very well, read recommended books and other materials provided by now. Each unit contains self-assessment exercises. You are required to submit assignments for assessment purposes. There is a final examination, as you all know. The course should take you about 20 weeks to complete. You need to allocate your time in order to complete the course successfully and on time. Thank you very much for listening.